Hey, what's going on, Ram fans? Going to get into the Rams Vikings game from another perspective. I will be comparing each of the two teams' units side by side, see how they measure up. Got a little scoring system set up. It's going to be fun. Good way of looking at how these rosters are built, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and who comes out on top. Is that a predictor of the result? Maybe not, but we'll have added anyways. And before we get to that, got to give a shout out to the Arizona Cardinals organization helping out a divisional rival. Rams will be playing in Arizona, obviously, and the Cardinals are sending out a couple of 777s to transport Rams players, pets, and all to Arizona. Rams will be using their training facility, and pretty nice gesture by the Arizona Cardinals organization. Getting behind a team that's in a little bit of a desperate situation. Certainly not ideal for our LA Rams, but certainly not giving up on them either. So thank you to the Arizona Cardinals for helping out here. And I'm not going to get into the fires anymore this episode. We'll get into that a little bit more as the week goes along. Still kind of assessing how bad it was, and it's pretty bad. But we will bounce back. Hey, if you want to see what J.J. Redick had to say about it, his little press conference, kind of a good way of wrapping our arms around the situation and the way forward. Reach out to get on YouTube and check that out. Pretty good stuff. Salute to J.J. Redick for putting things into perspective. So let's get to this assessment. Rams versus Vikings, unit by unit. How do they measure up? Let's get to it. Vikings versus Rams. Let's start with the quarterback position. Going into the season, this was a total mismatch, right? Sam Darnold taking over after J.J. McCarthy's injury. Now, maybe Darnold would have started at the beginning of the year regardless. Going up against Matthew Stafford, you compare these two guys, their careers, no comparison. But Darnold stepped up and had a great season. But let's not forget, he has no playoff experience. And that may have started to show in that loss last week to Detroit. And then you have Matthew Stafford, perhaps a Hall of Famer, has a Super Bowl title. He is the man. He is the gunslinger. Who you got in this matchup? Well, out of 5 possible points, I'm going to give the Rams 4 and the Vikings 3. Going to ding Stafford because he does have some unsettling performances once in a while. And he is getting up there in years. He's had a couple of performances this year that we might want to forget. Don't expect that to happen in the playoffs, though. And then Sam Darnold, great regular season, yes. But until we see it in the playoffs in a big game, can't give him that many points, hence the 3 points. Rams up 4-3 on the scoreboard here. Running backs, well, Aaron Jones, when he was with the Packers, really impressed me. He's still a very good running back. He has the edge over the Rams' Kyren Williams as far as yards per carry, but Kyren definitely has a bigger nose for the end zone. 14 rushing TDs to Jones' 5. That's an issue the Vikings have been dealing with, is finishing drives on the ground. But Jones is the better receiver, over 400 yards this year through the air, which matches what Kyren has done for his entire career. Not clear on why the Rams don't use him more in the passing game, actually. But I'm going to give both teams 4 points here. Aaron Jones, a more versatile back. Kyren Williams, a better red zone back. Very similar stats. Kyren about 160 more yards on the year. And so our new score is Rams 8, Vikings 7. Next up, wide receivers. So what I did is I ranked these receivers regardless of team. Justin Jefferson has to be at the top, right? It's either him or Jamar Chase. You want to identify the best receiver in the NFL right now, Jefferson, 1,533 yards and 10 TDs. The second best receiver in this game at this time is Puka Nacua, 79 catches, 990 yards, 3 TDs, and he missed some games. Did not make the Pro Bowl because of that, I think, but he's probably a top 5 receiver in the National Football League right now. And I'm going to rank Jordan Addison just above Cooper Kupp based on recent performances, but Addison, man, 9 TDs. So he's a touchdown maker. And then Cooper Kupp, one of the best receivers of the last 7 or 8 years, but has tailed off recently. 67 catches, 710 yards, and 6 TDs. Vikings don't bring much to the table after that. Their best receivers, yardage-wise, after that are the tight end TJ Hawkinson. We'll talk about him in a minute. And Aaron Jones. Meanwhile, the Rams can run Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington out there, who steps up on a particular day. You never know. The Vikings' Jalen Naylor does contribute to some degree. And I'm going to call this a wash, giving both teams 5 points. I mean, Justin Jefferson, come on. He is so good. And then the Rams' depth at that position, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, 2 stud wide receivers. Yeah, they both get 5s here. So the Rams maintaining a 1-point lead, 13-12. The tight end position, very interesting. These guys are similar in some ways. Both of them had their 2023 seasons ended by, some would say, a dirty hit. Others would say just a legal low hit by Kirby Joseph of the Lions, both with limited playtime in 2024, especially Higbee. So I took a look at their 2023 stats rather than this year's. Hawkinson, 95 catches for 127 yards and 5 TDs. Tyler Higbee, 47 catches for 495 yards and 2 TDs. And Higbee's already matched that TD total this year in the short time he's been back. TJ Hawkinson, he's played 10 games this season. I'm going to give a slight advantage to Hawkinson here. His stats have been a little bit better over the course of his career. Tyler Higbee, fresh legs though. He could really impact this game. Now, I'm only awarding a max of 3 points for the tight end, since it is just one guy typically, unless you run 12 personnel out there. And I'm going to give Hawkinson 2.5 points and Higbee of the Rams 2. So the Vikings have narrowed the gap a little bit. Rams up 15 to 14.5. Let's talk about the offensive line. Now, the Vikings suffered a brutal injury early in the year against the Rams, actually. Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, going down, but they traded for Cam Robinson. So their offensive line left to right, Robinson, Brandell, Bradbury, Risner, and O'Neal. The Rams' offensive line left to right, Alaric Jackson, Steve Avila, the rookie Bo Limmer, Kevin Dotson, and Rob Havenstein, the steady senior member of this team. Overall, the Vikings line has performed pretty well. They do struggle against the blitz, though. We saw that against the Lions. And that's magnified by the fact that Sam Darnold has a tendency to hold onto the ball longer than most, if not all, NFL quarterbacks. The Rams' offensive line, very good performance, too. 5th in sack rate and 3rd in run blocking by some metrics. Now, the Rams' numbers are skewed, though. They were really banged up early in the year. So I'm guessing if you take their performance over the last 8 or 9 weeks, those numbers are even better. So I'm giving the Rams a slight edge here, 4.5 to 4 out of the 5 points. Rams getting 4.5, Vikings getting 4, and the Rams have a 1-point lead again, 19.5 to 18.5. Let's jump over to the defense and talk about the interior defensive line. The Vikings, overall their defense had a great year, but the interior D might have been their weakest spot. Not that it's weak, just overshadowed by some of the other units, especially the outside linebackers. They did not perform as well as the Rams in the red zone. The defensive line accounted for just 4 sacks on the year. Harrison Phillips, the nose tackle, had 56 tackles. That was the most along the front there. The Rams' defensive line, meanwhile, accounted for 18 sacks. Braden Fisk had 8.5. Kobe Turner had 8. Kobe Turner had a total of 62 tackles along the front there. Pretty impressive. Again, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Rams here. 4 points to 3.5 out of 5. Rams get 4. Vikings get 3.5. And the lead is up to 1.5 points. Rams have 23.5. The Vikings 22. Let's talk about the outside linebackers. This is a fun group on both sides to talk about. 2 very strong units. The Vikings, led by Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, ain't too shabby either. Those two combined had 23.5 sacks. And then over on the Rams side, two young outside linebackers we'll talk about, Jared Verse and Byron Young. Michael Hoyt also contributes. They only had 12 sacks, but a little bit misleading because they generated a lot of pressure, just didn't get to the quarterback as much. Verse, 77 pressures. That's the 7th in the entire league. Van Ginkel and Verse, both Pro Bowlers. Verse, the likely Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going to ding the Rams a little bit for missed tackles, especially Verse, but Verse's pressure rate will be a really big factor in this game, along with Fisk, especially against a quarterback like Darnold, who likes to hold onto the ball. I'm going to give the Vikings a slight edge here, though, based on the number of sacks those two guys produce. 4.5 points for the Vikings, 4 for the Rams. So it's back down to a 1-point lead for our Rams. They have 27.5, the Vikings 26.5. Inside linebackers. I'm only awarding 4 points here. It's a two-man unit, sometimes only one inside linebacker out there for both teams. Secret weapon up there in Minnesota, Blake Cashman, 112 total tackles. He missed that first Rams-Vikings game. And Ivan Pace Jr., 72 tackles. Very similar to the Rams inside linebackers, actually. Christian Roseboom had even more tackles than Cashman, 135. And Omar Spates, 67 tackles. And he took over the starting job there midway through the season. So little deceiving. He had a really good year. Cashman, Roseboom, some similarities. Spates and Pace, similarities as well. Both undrafted free agents. Yeah, Spates took over for Troy Reeder, who had 46 tackles. So if Spates had been in there the whole season, probably would have had another 50, 60 tackles, my guess would be. Spates is a great tackler, recording the lowest missed tackle rate of any rookie linebacker, 5.7%. So I'd give Cashman a slight edge over Roseboom. Roseboom probably a better tackler, Cashman better in coverage. I'd give a significant edge to Spates over Pace, though, especially as far as upside. Spates getting named to a bunch of all-rookie teams, second team anyways, so he's starting to get some recognition. There's nobody elite here. I'm just going to call this a 2-2 wash, so nothing changes. Rams still with a 1-point lead, 29.5 to 28.5. Cornerback, the best in this group across both teams is clearly Byron Murphy II. He's heading to the Pro Bowl for the Vikings. Everyone else here, solid if unspectacular. Witherspoon has really elevated his play lately for the Rams. Griffin and Gilmore, tons of experience. The Rams' secret weapon here might be Quentin Lake. He hasn't had many splash plays this season, but he's definitely one of the leaders of this defense. I'm going to go 4 points for the Vikings, 3.5 for the Rams, mainly due to Murphy's All-Pro season. I think that's fair. No weak players here. Murphy is the difference maker, though. But, man, Quentin Lake, keep an eye on him. So it's Rams 33, Vikings 32.5. Let's talk about safeties. 4 points max for this group. You know, safeties aren't valued much in the draft, and I'm not going to value them as much as cornerbacks here. I think that's realistic. Makes sense to me. So 4 points. These two units overloaded with Camerons here. The Vikings have Cameron Bynum. The Rams, Cameron Kinchins and Cameron Curl. The oddball in this group is Harrison Smith, but something else odd about him, he's probably the best player in this group. Very experienced, highly productive. I think he gives the Vikings a slight edge here, although Kinchins has proven he has big playability all season long, had that 103-yard interception return, and he has 4 interceptions on the year, and he's a big hitter as well. By the way, the Rams bringing back safety John Johnson, a veteran, for this game. Don't think he'll be a factor, though. But still, Vikings a slight edge here. They get 3 points. The Rams 2.5, and we're all tied up. 35.5 points for both teams. Special teams, again, only 4 points max for the special teams. So let's walk through these punters. Ethan Evans, 30 punts inside the 20. Ryan Wright, He's kind of right there with Evans, although Evans just 2 touchbacks all season. That's pretty impressive. Joshua Carty and Will Reichard, the kickers, again, similar, but Reichard has been more consistent over the course of the year. Carty has kind of picked things up recently. He's getting named to all rookie teams as well, second team. So overall, Reichard's probably the better kicker, but Carty is coming on. Returners, Xavier Smith, 9.3 average. Brandon Powell, 7.1. Net punting average for these two teams is almost identical. Opponents' kickoff returns, top 2 in the league. Let's just call this a 3-3 tie, although Joshua Carty could end up being a difference maker the way he's come on late in the season. Made his last 13 kicks and 2 50-yarders just last week. Also got to keep an eye on the Rams' kickoff return game. Jordan Whittington has been picking things up there. So a 3-3 tie, and the score is 38.5 to 38.5. I looked at the depth on these two teams. I'm just going to give 1 point. Now, if something happens to either quarterback, the Rams are better positioned. Jimmy G versus Nick Mullins. We're hoping that doesn't happen for either team. Gotta like the Vikings running back depth more than the Rams anyways. Blake Corum, the Rams' number 2 guy, out for the year. The Vikings, Cam Akers backing up Aaron Jones, and he will be chomping at the bit to get at the Rams, won't he? So the Rams have Ronnie Rivers and Royce Freeman probably backing up Kyron Williams. Both of them are efficient, but nothing to get too excited about. So slight edge there for the Vikings, I think. Jalen Redmond gives the Vikings some quality depth up front on the defensive line. And you got to love the Rams' offensive line depth. Some guys got a lot of playing time. Justin Dedich, Jonah Jackson, a free agent, who's now a backup. They're well positioned if someone gets hurt, I think. Vikings, not so much. Big advantage for the Rams at wide receiver, in my opinion. They can go 5-6 deep. And same deal at tight end with Tyler Higbee out most of the year. Some guys stepped up. Johnny Munt of the Vikings, he's a good blocker. Doesn't bring much to the table other than that, though. Rams have a pretty deep secondary as well. We already mentioned John Johnson coming back. Kobe Durant, Jalen McCullough, reliable contributors. I'm going to go with the Rams here. I'm going to give them the half point, just a half point. Vikings get 0. Rams have a half-point lead, 39 to 38.5, which brings us to coaching. 2 points max here. Now, this game's going to be won on the field, but coaching and game planning matters. We all know that. And when you talk about coaching as far as the Vikings, you're going to talk about their head coach, Kevin O'Connell, but you also have to talk about their defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, one of the best in the business. Combined, doesn't get much better than that. Well, head coaching, let's talk about Sean McVay. Top 3 coach in this league, right? Especially regarding culture. The culture with the Rams, no one does it better than Sean McVay. Some question his game planning, if not his offensive play design. And you want to talk playoffs? Yeah, I'm going to take McVay here. I'm going to give 2 points to the Rams, 2 out of 2, the max you can give for coaching. 1.5 for the Vikings, because I think they do have a very good coaching staff. But the Rams add another half point to their lead. They're ahead 41 to 40. And then I looked at intangibles, and this is probably the most difficult thing to look at, obviously. But let's give it a try. You could say that the Vikings have an edge in that, hey, they're thinking they're going to go play at SoFi in front of a hostile crowd. And now it's in Arizona. Got to kind of like that from the Vikings' perspective. Could end up being a 50-50 crowd for all we know. And the Rams, do they have an edge in that they're playing for the city of Los Angeles? Just went through this natural disaster, these fires across the county. Yeah, I could see that. And then they're better rested. They're extremely healthy, and they just have a great culture as well. But I don't think either team really has an advantage here. We don't know. Maybe one of them does, but we can't put our finger on it. We can't figure it out quite yet. This is a weird situation. This game being moved to Arizona could help or hurt either one of these teams. So I'm not going to give either team an edge. I'll give them both a half a point. And that gives us a final score Rams 41.5, Vikings 40.5. Let's round up 42-41. And I think that tells us what our final score is. Divide by 2, well, more or less anyways. And the Rams win 22-20. There you have it. Don't even need to play this game. We figured it out for you. Going position group by position group, coaching, intangibles, depth. Rams got the 2-point edge. Actually, I think this game's going to overtime.